When you think of teamwork in the animal kingdom, what comes to mind? Perhaps it's the classic image of a clownfish, darting safely through the stinging tentacles of a sea anemone. It's a beautiful, almost perfect picture of cooperation. The fish gets a fortress, a home no predator dares to enter, and in return, it cleans its host and might even lure in food. This is symbiosis as we've always understood it. A biological handshake, a friendly agreement between two different species that makes life better for everyone involved. Nature is full of these seemingly wholesome alliances, from the tiny shrimp that bravely clean the teeth of giant moray eels, to the birds that pick parasites off the backs of rhinos. It's a comforting thought, isn't it? That in the brutal, competitive world of survival, life can also be about partnership and mutual support. But what if that comfort is an illusion? What if these partnerships aren't always so friendly, so equal? Take a closer look at that handshake. Is the grip equally firm on both sides, or is one partner squeezing just a little too tight? We call it a partnership, but in any deal, someone usually has the upper hand. What if these natural contracts are written in an invisible biological ink, with fine print so complex that one party doesn't even know what it's signing away? What if it's less of a handshake and more of a deal with the devil? A bargain struck out of desperation, where the price you pay is a small, unnoticed piece of yourself. And what if, over time, that price keeps getting higher? To find the answer, we have to leave the sunlit reefs behind and travel to the moonlit shallows of the Pacific Ocean. Here, in the waters around the Hawaiian Islands, lives a creature that looks as though it were crafted from pearl and moonlight. Meet the Hawaiian bobtail squid. It's tiny, barely the size of your thumb, and utterly defenseless. During the day, it hides, buried in the sand. But at night, it must emerge to hunt. This is its moment of greatest peril. Predators lurk in the darker waters below, their eyes turned upwards, searching for the one thing that will give the squid away. Its own shadow, a tiny silhouette cast against the glittering surface of the ocean. For a creature this fragile, survival seems impossible. How can it possibly hide from enemies that are hunting its very outline? Can't outswim them, can't fight them. So it made a deal. It struck a bargain not with another animal, but with an ancient and innumerable force of life, bacteria. Specifically, a shimmering, glowing species called Vibrio fischeri. Every evening, as the sun sets, the bobtail squid draws these microbes in from the surrounding seawater. It offers them the ultimate prize, a 5-star hotel. Inside its body is a specialized organ, a complex structure with lenses and reflectors designed for one purpose: to be the perfect home for these glowing tenants, providing them with sugar and amino acids, a constant feast in a safe, protected space. And what does the squid get in return for this generous hospitality? Something straight out of science fiction, a cloak of invisibility. This isn't a simple all-or-nothing glow. It's one of the most sophisticated camouflage systems in the natural world. The squid has delicate sensors on its back that constantly measure the precise intensity and color of the moonlight filtering down from the surface. It then uses its light organ like an incredibly advanced dimmer switch, signaling its bacterial guests to produce just the right amount of light, projecting it downwards. The projected light perfectly matches the moonlight from above, effectively canceling out the squid's shadow. To a predator below, the squid simply vanishes. It's a ghost in the water, a masterpiece of biological engineering. It sounds like the perfect deal, right? Fair trade. But the reality is far more unsettling. The relationship is less of a partnership and more of a constant, desperate struggle for control. These bacterial guests are voracious. They reproduce so quickly that if left unchecked, they would overwhelm their host, consuming all its resources and essentially eating it from the inside out. To prevent this, the squid must perform a drastic ritual every single morning at sunrise. It violently expels nearly 95% of its bacterial population back into the ocean, keeping only a small seed colony to regrow the next day. Think about that. It's a daily, brutal purge, a desperate act of self-preservation just to keep its end of the bargain from killing it. The squid may be the landlord, but the tenants are the ones setting the house rules. This constant battle for balance hints at a deeper, more disturbing truth. the squid is not fully in control. Scientists have discovered that this symbiotic relationship comes at a profound cost. The bacteria don't just provide light. They actively manipulate their host's biology on a fundamental level. Their presence, their chemical signals, and the light they produce directly interfere with the squid's master biological clock. The proteins that govern the animal's circadian rhythms, its sense of day and night, its cycle of rest and activity, are hijacked by its microbial partners. The bacteria, in a very real sense, are the ones who tell the squid when to sleep and when to wake. So who is really in charge here? Is the squid wearing its cloak of light, or has the cloak learned to wear the squid? This isn't a simple alliance anymore. It's a hostage situation, repeated every single night. The squid is completely dependent on the bacteria for its survival, but to get that protection, it has to surrender a piece of its own biological sovereignty. It has given up conscious control over its own body clock, one of the most ancient and fundamental rhythms of life itself. The bargain for invisibility has cost the squid a part of its own identity, turning it into a vessel, a vehicle whose daily life is dictated by the microscopic passengers it carries within. This is the hidden contract of symbiosis, written in the language of molecules and proteins. It's a chilling example of how one life form can cede control to another, not through force, but through a mutually beneficial arrangement that slowly erodes independence. And if this kind of subtle biological hijacking is happening right now in a tiny squid, it serves as a terrifying blueprint for the future. In the dark, changing oceans that are to come, what happens when these alliances escalate? What new forms of control will emerge as life gets more desperate? This microscopic power struggle is just the beginning, a quiet prelude to a world where the lines between partners and puppets begin to blur entirely. What happens when the deals become less of a partnership and more of a hostile takeover? This microscopic power struggle for control over a creature's internal clock is just the beginning. It's a quiet, insidious form of manipulation, a subtle erosion of independence. But what happens when the manipulation is no longer subtle? What happens when the partnership is thrown out the window entirely, replaced by a brutal, hostile takeover of the host's mind? We're now entering a realm far beyond mere influence. We're talking about biological puppetry, where the strings are pulled not by a puppeteer, but by an infection. This is the world of mind control, a terrifying reality where an organism's own thoughts and instincts are no longer its own, rewritten by a parasite with a sinister agenda. This isn't just the stuff of science fiction. It's happening right now, in our own oceans. Consider the story of a single-celled parasite called Toxoplasma gondii. To most people, it's known for its connection to cats, which are its definitive host, the only place it can sexually reproduce. But its life cycle is a grim odyssey that often leads it far from land. Cysts shed by cats can be washed into rivers and estuaries, eventually making their way into the marine ecosystem. There, they are ingested by filter feeders like mussels and clams, concentrating in their tissues. And when a hungry sea otter comes along and enjoys a shellfish dinner, the parasite finds a new, temporary home. You might think this is a dead end for the parasite. How could it possibly get from a sea otter back to a cat? Can't. But what it does to the otter reveals the terrifying power it wields. Once inside, the parasite doesn't just sit there. It migrates, making its way to the otter's brain, where it forms microscopic cysts. And this is where the horror truly begins. Infected otters start to behave strangely. They lose their natural, healthy fear of predators. They become bolder, more reckless, more likely to approach sharks. A bizarre and fatal behavior change. The parasite, in its blind evolutionary drive to get back to a feline host, is turning up the risk-taking dial in the otter's brain, making it an easier target. How is this even possible? How can a single-celled organism hijack the brain of a complex, intelligent mammal? The mechanism is a chilling feat of biochemical warfare. These parasites can interfere with crucial neurotransmitters, the chemical messengers that govern mood, fear, and motivation. They can literally warp the host's perception of reality, dampening its fear response and dialing up its reward-seeking behavior. The otter isn't just sick. Its brain is being actively reprogrammed. The fundamental instinct of self-preservation is being systematically dismantled by an invader that sees the otter not as a living being, but as a disposable vehicle. This is what's happening today. Now, project this into the deep future. Our oceans are changing, becoming warmer, more acidic, and creating immense pressure for life to adapt in radical new ways. They are a perfect evolutionary laboratory for the strange and the unsettling. So, what happens when a marine parasite evolves beyond simply making its host reckless? What if it could write a more specific set of instructions? Imagine a microbe that doesn't just whisper suggestions into its host's brain but grabs the controls and steers it towards a precise, predetermined fate. A parasite that doesn't hope for an accident, but orchestrates a sacrifice. Let's call this future horror the neurosovereign. It's a microbe that has evolved a truly terrifying level of sophistication. It doesn't just form cysts. It integrates itself directly into the host's central nervous system. Using bioluminescent proteins, it forms a glowing, parasitic neural net that overlays the host's own brain. From this command center, it can do more than just influence behavior. It can issue direct commands. It can generate false sensory inputs, create irresistible compulsions, and completely silence the host's own survival instincts. The host becomes a prisoner in its own body, its consciousness pushed into a dark corner while the parasite takes the helm. Picture a small fish swimming in the twilight zone. For its entire life, its existence has been defined by two simple rules: find food and avoid being eaten. But one day it ingests a neurosovereign spore. A faint, ethereal glow begins to bloom within its skull. The fish's normal behaviors fade. It loses interest in food. It ignores the frantic signals from its school to flee an approaching shadow. Instead, a new, singular purpose consumes its being. An overwhelming urge, a blissful command, tells it to swim upwards, towards a specific predator. The one creature in this vast ocean that serves as the parasite's final destination. As the predator approaches, the small fish doesn't panic. It doesn't try to escape. It swims forward with a serene, unwavering purpose, its brain glowing like a beacon. To an observer, it would look like madness, a complete breakdown of natural law. But for the fish, in its final moments, there is no fear. There is only the fulfillment of a mission it doesn't understand. The predator strikes, and the parasite's life cycle is complete. The fish's body has been nothing more than a living, self-guided torpedo, its entire existence reduced to a single, suicidal delivery run for its microscopic master. This is the ultimate horror of parasitic symbiosis. It's not just about sickness or death. It is the complete annihilation of the self. Free will becomes a biological illusion, easily erased by a more determined form of life. A creature's mind, its choices, its very identity, are stolen and turned into tools to serve another's survival. Mind-controlling microbes are terrifying enough, turning the ocean's inhabitants into puppets on invisible strings. But in the deep, dark future, this kind of biological hijacking is evolving into something far more tangible, something you can see and touch. It's moving from the mind to the flesh itself. Hijacking a creature's mind is a terrifying violation, turning a living being into a mere vehicle, a puppet whose strings are pulled by a microscopic invader. But the horror doesn't stop there. If an organism can surrender control of its thoughts, what's to stop it from surrendering control of its body? The next step in this evolutionary arms race goes beyond the manipulation of nerves and chemicals. It's a physical invasion, a grotesque resculpting of flesh and bone. We're moving from the horror of losing your mind to the horror of losing your body, watching as it is twisted, replaced, and integrated into something alien, something new. To understand this, you need to meet a creature that seems to have crawled out of a nightmare. It's an isopod, a type of crustacean, known scientifically as Symbiotic exigua, but it's better known by its more direct and far more disturbing nickname, the tongue-eating louse. Its life begins as a tiny, free-swimming juvenile searching for a very specific home. It finds a fish, usually a snapper, and slips in through the gills. A silent, unnoticed intruder. Once inside the fish's mouth, it climbs onto the tongue, sinks its sharp claws in, and begins to feed. It doesn't just take a little blood. It latches onto the main artery that supplies the tongue. What happens next is the stuff of biological horror. The parasite's constant feeding severs the blood supply. Deprived of life-giving circulation, the fish's tongue begins to wither. It shrinks, turns gray, and eventually the tissue dies and disintegrates completely. The fish has had one of its own organs amputated from the inside out. But the parasite doesn't leave. This is where the story takes a truly bizarre turn. The isopod attaches its own body to the stub of the amputated tongue. Its legs grip the remaining muscle, and its body settles into the very space where the tongue used to be. It has not just destroyed an organ, it has replaced it. Incredibly, the fish doesn't die. It adapts. It can now use the parasite's hard, armored body as a prosthetic tongue. It can manipulate food, push it towards its gullet, and continue to live a relatively normal life. From the outside, you might not even notice anything is wrong. But inside, the fish is now a chimera, a hybrid creature whose mouth contains a living, breathing, alien appendage. Where does the fish end and the isopod begin? They are now functionally, physically integrated. The parasite gets a safe home and first dibs on any food the fish eats, and the fish gets a grotesque, but working replacement for what it lost. This isn't just parasitism. It's a hostile, physical merger. This real-world body snatcher is a blueprint for something even more profound in the oceans of the future. As competition becomes fiercer and resources dwindle, the line between parasite and host will continue to blur. Evolution will favor not just those who steal, but those who integrate. Enter the flesh weavers. These are the descendants of today's parasites, but they have evolved beyond simple replacement. Their goal is not just to live off a host, but to physically augment it, to fuse with it and create a single, more powerful entity. They are biological sculptors, and their medium is living flesh. Imagine a future crab, a descendant of the humble decorator crabs we see today. But this one doesn't just stick pieces of sponge or anemone to its shell for camouflage. It enters into a permanent, horrifying contract. As a juvenile, it finds a specific, highly venomous species of parasitic anemone. It doesn't just place the anemone on its claw, it actively encourages the anemone to attach. Over time, their tissues begin to fuse. The anemone's cells grow into the crab's shell, and the crab's circulatory system extends into the anemone, feeding it directly. Their nervous systems begin to intertwine. The crab can now send signals to the anemone, controlling when it fires its venomous, stinging nematocysts. This is no longer a crab carrying a weapon. The weapon has become part of the crab. It wields its fused claw like a living mace, a permanent, venom-injecting appendage that it can command at will. The distinction between the two creatures is gone. They have become a single organism, a monstrous but brutally efficient predator born from a parasitic pact. The crab gave up a part of its body, and in return it gained a power it could never have evolved on its own. The anemone gave up its independence and became a living tool, but one that is guaranteed protection and a constant supply of food. But augmentation isn't just about creating weapons. Consider a future sea slug, a nudibranch gliding slowly across the seafloor. It forms a symbiosis with a new form of photosynthesizing algae. But these algae are not content to simply live on the slug's skin. They are flesh weavers. They burrow into the host's tissues, integrating themselves so deeply that the slug's very anatomy begins to change to accommodate them. Its skin becomes translucent to let in more light. Its digestive system shrinks, as it now gets most of its energy directly from its internal solar panels. It has become a plant-animal hybrid, a living, breathing photosynthesizer that basks in the sunlit shallows, powered by the light of a star. These fusions, these chimeras of flesh, represent the next frontier of symbiosis. The line between two separate lives is not just blurred, it's completely erased. What emerges is a living mosaic, a single being built from the pieces of two. The horror here is profound, challenging our very definition of an individual. But it's also a story of survival. In the relentless struggle for life, merging, augmenting, and becoming something more than yourself might be the only way forward. So far, we've seen manipulation and monstrous fusion on an individual scale. But this same logic, when applied to entire communities, can lead to something far grander. Sometimes, the most unlikely creatures will forge alliances that defy imagination, creating not just monsters, but living ecosystems. So far, our journey into the future of symbiosis has been a descent into darkness. We've seen microscopic tenants hijacking their host's body clock, mind-controlling parasites turning creatures into willing sacrifices, and gruesome fusions that erase the very definition of an individual. It's a gallery of biological horrors, showcasing the brutal lengths life will go to survive. But the future of symbiosis isn't just a story of monsters and manipulation. Sometimes the most desperate alliances lead not to horror, but to a kind of grandeur that borders on the divine. To see it, we have to witness one of the most profound events in the deep ocean: a whale fall. When a great whale dies in the open ocean, its body, weighing many tons, begins a slow, silent descent. It falls for days, sinking through the twilight zone and into the eternal midnight of the abyss. Where it lands, on the barren, muddy seafloor, a miracle happens. The carcass becomes an instant oasis of life. For years, scavengers like hagfish and sleeper sharks feast on the soft tissues. Once they are done, a new community arrives. Bizarre, bone-eating worms, the Ostax worms, who drill into the skeleton, digesting the fats within. Finally, for decades, even a century, the bones support colonies of chemosynthetic bacteria, creating a thriving ecosystem where there was once only desolate mud. A single death gives rise to generations of life. This is the ocean's way of recycling, of creating life from death. But it raises a profound question. Why wait for death? In a future ocean defined by scarcity and extreme competition, what if life finds a way to create these oases while the host is still alive? What if the most extreme form of symbiosis wasn't about parasitism or a simple partnership, but about an entire ecosystem building its home on the back of a living god? The grotesque fusions of flesh we saw earlier were just a prelude. Now, imagine that principle scaled up to the size of a mountain. Picture a descendant of the gentle whale shark. But this creature is different. It is ancient, slow, and colossal, stretching hundreds of meters from snout to tail, the largest living thing the world has ever seen. It doesn't swim so much as it drifts, a silent continent of flesh navigating the abyssal currents. Its hide is not smooth skin, but a thick, rugged landscape, a living crust built from countless generations of barnacles, corals, and sponges that have taken root. This creature isn't just an animal anymore. It has become a mobile reef, a self-contained world. It has become a living island. This moving ecosystem is a masterpiece of coevolution. The surface is a sprawling, complex city. Specialized crabs, whose ancestors once merely clung to whales, now act as diligent gardeners. They spend their entire lives crawling through the coral forests on the creature's back, clearing away parasites, pruning algae, and ensuring the health of the reef that is both their home and part of their host. In the deep trenches of its skin, entire communities of shrimp thrive, cleaning the great beast's gills in exchange for protection and a constant stream of food. They are the maintenance crew of a living vessel, their destinies permanently intertwined with the slow, steady heartbeat of the giant beneath them. And in the absolute darkness of the abyss, the living island makes its own light. Vast patches of its hide are colonized by bioluminescent fungi, a future evolution of the microbes that cause foxfire in rotting wood. These fungi have formed a deep symbiosis with the host, drawing nutrients directly from its skin. In return, they cast an eerie, shifting constellation of cold, blue-green light across its back. This ghostly glow illuminates its path, a moving galaxy in the endless night. But it's also a lure, attracting smaller creatures from the dark, which in turn feed the thousands of fish and other organisms that call the living reef their home. This is not a one-sided relationship. The living island is no passive landlord. The immense reef on its back serves as a near-impenetrable coat of armor. The army of cleaning crabs ensures it remains healthy, free from the infections and larger parasites that might plague such a massive organism. The cloud of life that surrounds it acts as a permanent, mobile pantry. This isn't just a host and its tenants. This is a single, integrated superorganism. It's a city that feeds its citizens, and in return, the citizens maintain the city's walls and infrastructure. The scale of this mutualism is staggering, blurring the line between a single creature and a whole community. But as we gaze at this spectacle, a new, more profound mystery emerges. With thousands of organisms living in such intimate, physical contact, where does one life form end and the other begin? The nervous systems of the gardener crabs might interface with the host's skin receptors, allowing them to sense its health. The glowing fungi might brighten or dim in response to the host's stress hormones, signaling danger or contentment to the entire community. Could such a deeply interconnected network develop a form of collective consciousness? Not an intelligence we would recognize, but a distributed, slow-thinking mind, where the thoughts are chemical signals and the decisions are the collective movements of a million creatures acting as one. A single animal becoming a moving reef is one of the most awe-inspiring concepts imaginable, a testament to life's ability to build worlds from the most unlikely materials. But this is still just one island, moving through the dark. What happens when these titans, these living worlds, begin to interact? What happens when the largest animals on the planet evolve beyond being mere hosts and start working together, not just to support life, but to become the architects of the ocean itself? A living island, a continent of flesh carrying its own world through the abyss, is a concept that stretches the limits of imagination. But it's still a solitary existence, a single point of life in an ocean of darkness. What happens when the grandest creatures on our planet learn to work together, not just as hosts, but as a collective force? To find the answer, we need to do something simple. Listen. Listen to the most profound and far-reaching voice in the animal kingdom. The song of the whale. It's a sound that is impossibly vast and lonely. A complex series of moans, cries, and pulses that can travel for hundreds, even thousands of kilometers through the water. We call it a song, a tool for communication or navigation. But what if it's more? What if that voice has the power not just to be heard by other whales, but by the ocean itself? First, we must understand the landscape where this song finds its audience. The abyssal plains. These are the vast, flat, sediment-covered expanses that make up most of the deep ocean floor. It is a world of crushing pressure, absolute cold, and eternal darkness. Life here is sparse, often huddled around rare oases like hydrothermal vents or the decomposing skeletons of whale falls. For the most part, it is a desert, barren, and seemingly lifeless. But hidden within that cold, dark mud lies a secret, a vast, sleeping potential. Dormant colonies of chemosynthetic bacteria, microbes that don't need sunlight to live. Instead, they feast on chemical energy, on compounds like hydrogen sulfide or methane, waiting for a trigger, a signal to bloom. Now, journey with us into the future. Imagine a new lineage of great whales, descendants of today's humpbacks or fin whales. Under the pressures of a changing world, they have evolved. Their songs have changed. The familiar, haunting melodies have deepened into something more primal, more powerful. It's a low-frequency hum that borders on the subsonic, a vibration you feel in your bones more than you hear with your ears. This isn't a song meant solely for other whales. This is a tool. This is a key, designed to unlock the sleeping energy of the deep earth. As these future titans glide through the upper ocean, they begin their song. The immense, low-frequency vibrations radiate downwards, traveling through kilometers of water with very little loss of energy. They don't just bounce off the seafloor, they penetrate it. The sound waves travel through the soft sediment, carrying a resonant frequency that has been perfectly tuned over millions of years of evolution. The vibrations find their target, the dormant bacterial colonies and the chemical-rich deposits they are buried in. The rhythmic pulse shakes the very fabric of the seafloor, triggering a cascade. The vibrations stimulate the bacteria's metabolism, waking them from their long slumber. At the same time, they might destabilize pockets of trapped gases, causing a slow, controlled release of the very chemicals these microbes need to feast. And then, the seafloor begins to glow. What was once a barren desert of mud starts to shimmer with a faint, cold light. It's a silent, slow-motion explosion of life. The awakened bacteria begin to multiply at an astonishing rate, forming vast, shimmering mats that spread across the abyss. They are a new primary producer in this dark world, a foundation for a food chain that didn't exist here moments before. Tiny crustaceans and worms emerge from the mud to graze on these new bacterial gardens. Soon, small fish and squid arrive, drawn to the impossible bloom of life. A thriving, temporary ecosystem has been born from nothing but sound and mud. This is planetary-scale agriculture. The whales are not benevolent gods. They are farmers. After seeding a patch of the abyss with their song, they move on, continuing their ancient migration routes. But their routes are no longer just about finding mates or warmer waters. They are now cyclical farming patterns. They sing to their fields across an entire ocean basin, and then, months later, they return. As they pass over the areas they once seeded, they dive deep. They find not just glowing bacteria, but a thriving community teeming with the krill and fish that have gathered to feast on the bloom. The whales then harvest the fruits of their labor, feeding on the bounty they themselves created. This isn't the work of a single whale. It's the coordinated effort of an entire global population. Imagine pods of these great beings, separated by thousands of kilometers, their songs overlapping and harmonizing. Their collective voices become a single planetary instrument, managing the productivity of the deep ocean. They are no longer just living in their environment. They are actively engineering it on a geological scale. The rhythm of their songs becomes the new pulse of the deep sea, a global metabolism dictated by the musical culture of the planet's largest inhabitants. They have gone beyond symbiosis with a single organism and have entered into a symbiotic relationship with the planet itself. The mystery here is profound. Is this behavior purely instinctual, a complex pattern hardwired by evolution? Or is it something more? Is it conscious? Is it a deliberate, learned tradition passed down through generations, a form of culture so advanced it literally shapes the world? We see them as animals, but at this scale, they are a force of nature. Their songs are not just calls in the dark. They are commands that bring light and life to the deepest corners of the world. They are architects, and their building material is life itself. These future giants are no longer just living in the ocean. They are actively building it, sculpting its very biology with sound. Their power is immense, their motives unknowable. They are terraformers of the deep, and their work raises one final, unsettling question. As these new, complex symbioses rewrite the very rules of life, creating mobile ecosystems and planetary-scale intelligence, where do we, humanity, fit into this new world? Are we even a part of the equation anymore? Our journey has taken us from a simple, familiar handshake between a fish and an anemone to a world sculpted by the songs of giants. We have seen the subtle bargains that erode free will, the parasitic mind control that turns victims into puppets, and the grotesque fusion of flesh that births new, monstrous forms of life. We've witnessed a single animal become a living world, and an entire species become planetary farmers. Each step has been a deeper descent into a future ocean that is becoming more interconnected, more intelligent, and more profoundly alien than we could ever have imagined. These are not isolated wonders or evolutionary quirks. They are signposts all pointing in the same direction, towards a new chapter for life on Earth. What we are witnessing is the birth of a new biological operating system. The fundamental unit of survival is no longer the individual organism, fighting for itself. It is the network, the alliance, the superorganism. Life is weaving itself together into vast, resilient, self-regulating systems that span entire ecosystems. The future of life isn't a tree with many separate branches. It's a web, so intricately woven that pulling on a single thread causes the entire structure to vibrate. This emerging ocean is becoming a single, vast biological circuit, more robust and adaptable than anything that has come before. And it is in the face of this new reality that we must ask the final and most unsettling question of all. At the end of the last act, we asked, where do we fit in? The answer is as simple as it is terrifying. We don't. We are outsiders. We are land dwellers, tied to the thin film of atmosphere on the planet's surface, observing this deep revolution from a distance. Our most advanced submersibles are fragile eggshells, crushed by the pressures of the world where this new life thrives. We can send down our cameras, our probes, our lights, and we can watch. But we cannot participate. We have become spectators to the next great leap of evolution on our own planet, a story being written in a language of biochemistry we can barely decipher, in a realm that is more hostile to us than the surface of Mars. This is the ultimate horror. It's not a monster with teeth that will rise from the deep to hunt us. It's the quiet, dawning, existential dread of our own irrelevance. For centuries, we have defined ourselves as the pinnacle of evolution, the sole proprietors of intelligence and consciousness on Earth. We acted as though the planet's story was our story. But this future ocean suggests we were wrong. It suggests that we might be little more than a brief, noisy terrestrial experiment. The real, enduring story of life on this planet is being written in the dark, and its main characters are not human. The world doesn't end with a bang or a whimper, but with the quiet realization that the party is continuing without you. This leaves us with one final, awe-inspiring, and profoundly frightening possibility. If all life in the ocean is becoming this deeply interconnected, if information is flowing not just between individuals but through entire ecosystems, what is the ultimate end point of this trend? Could this planetary-scale network of symbiotic relationships develop its own form of consciousness? We're not talking about a human-like mind trapped in a single brain. We're talking about something far grander, a biological intelligence, an emergent planetary mind, born from the collective actions of 1 trillion different organisms all working in concert. A global consciousness slowly waking up in the deep. What would such a mind be like? Its thoughts would not be words or images, but shifting currents of nutrients, the resonant frequency of a whale song, the slow spread of a bacterial bloom across 1,000 kilometers of seafloor. A single coherent idea might take a century to formulate, executed by millions of organisms that are entirely unaware of the role they play. Its senses would be the chemical receptors of 1 trillion microbes. Its memory would be written in the genetic code of its composite lifeforms. Its goals would be utterly alien to us, concerned not with years or decades, but with millennia. It would think in terms of planetary chemistry, geological time, and the long, slow arc of evolution itself. We push our technology to the limit, sending an unmanned probe to the deepest point on Earth, the Challenger Deep in the Mariana Trench, a place of absolute darkness and almost unimaginable pressure. For hours, its lights cut through the black, revealing nothing but the fine, pale sediment of the abyss. We expect to see perhaps a strange, pale fish or a translucent shrimp. But then we see it. In the distance, a light pulses, then another, and another. This isn't the random, startled flash of a deep-sea creature. This is organized. Across kilometers of the trench floor, a vast network of bioluminescent organisms is firing in a complex, rhythmic, deliberate sequence. It's a cascade of light, a wave of information flowing through the darkness. The pattern is intricate, structured, and undeniably intentional. It looks less like a biological process and more like a thought made visible. It's a signal, but we are not the intended audience. We are merely peering through a keyhole at something vast and incomprehensible. As we watch the silent, coordinated pulses of light ripple across the floor of the deepest trench on Earth, we are forced to confront the truth. We are not alone on this planet. We might not even be the dominant intelligence. We might simply be the brief, self-aware observers who were lucky enough to catch a fleeting glimpse of a global mind that has been here all along, a mind that is finally, slowly waking up in the eternal dark of the deep.